We'll see who joins us. Welcome everybody as you're coming in here. We were just chatting about pens. Feel free to chat your opinions on your pens in the chat channel.
I feel like we could get an active chat going on this. Well,
could we?
Good, sure. How many people out there like fountain pens? Fountain pen fans? Anyone?
Blue ink. I'm just, it has to be blue ink.
What shade of blue, Alexa? What shade?
Oh, I'm not that particular. I don't like black pens. I like blue pens, and just putting the plug in for the Carnegie conference pens. Like, they are the best.
They are like you get one at the conference, right?
You do.
Right.
Yeah.
That within itself is reason to register.
I mean, that's why I go every year.
I thought it was for the Disney World reception, but okay.
I mean, there's all that great marketing content and the fireworks show and great company and food and drink, but I go for the pens.
I will tell you that this is going to be my first time at any Disney property ever.
Really?
Wow. There's your fun fact.
That is a fun fact.
That is a fun fact.
But I am going to Disney World, not Disneyland, but Disney World. Eric, I particularly appreciated your very small rendition of that U2 song yesterday. That was very good.
Yeah. I think I actually used to mow the lawn to that single when I was a teenager. I'm not going to sing it here, but it was Mysterious Ways by U2. Internal call only.
Is this where we expose Megan Robinson to like a wider audience?
I knew it. This is now the third time in a week, and this time it's recorded. For the record, I have heard of you too. For the record.
Do you mean like me also, or actually the band U2?
No, actually the band U2. I actually Googled some of the songs afterwards, and I recognized that those were U2 songs. I didn't know that they were U2 songs. I knew the songs.
It's like when you listen to like I Will Always Love You and you don't know that Dolly Parton wrote it. You know you love the song, but you didn't know that Dolly wrote it. Or
I didn't know that Dolly wrote that.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, or a lot of stuff that Joni Mitchell has written or Bob Dylan has written that I don't really like listening when Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan sing it, but if I hear it on Glee, it sounds great.
I actually prefer some of the covers from Glee to the original. I'm just going to say it.
Totally. No, I totally agree. I mean, I didn't understand half of the Lady Gaga oeuvre until I heard Rachel sing it. And now I totally get it. Oh my.
We've got about 2 minutes for everybody. People are still funneling in. So heads up.
All right. Well, is anyone here traveling for the holidays next week, or are you all staying put where you are? Staying put?
Staying put.
We're traveling.
Where are you off to, Megan?
We're going to visit my parents in Indiana and then drive over to my boyfriend's parents in Pittsburgh.
Nice. All right. So are you going to be gone the entire, like, is it the whole span of like Christmas Eve to New Year's, or?
Just about. We're leaving, I think, the 23rd or even Christmas Eve and then coming back the 30th. So it's a full week, a nice big triangle. We do it for the holidays.
Oh, that'll be very cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you get really good weather. It's crazy windy here in Chicago now. I don't know what it's like.
Yeah, that was here last night. It was 75 degrees during the day. And then we had like 100-mile-an-hour winds coming through last night. It was crazy.
Yeah, there were pieces of aluminum on my outside of my garage this morning. I have no idea where they came detached from, but I kind of figure I'll spend part of the weekend figuring out where to reattach those pieces. Crazy times.
Something to look forward to this weekend, huh, Voltaire?
Oh, yes. Well, that grouting tile, Daniela.
I love it. Well, before we get to the weekend, we'll go ahead and start because it's the top of the hour. So welcome everyone who is joining us for our webinar today, A Whole New Web World. While our conference is in Disney in January, we promise not to sing any Disney songs for this webinar. Oh, Megan's shaking her head. She actually does not make that promise. She might bust out some tunes here. But we are excited to get started today. I am going to go ahead ahead and introduce myself. I'm Daniela. I'm the Associate VP of Marketing at Carnegie, the leader and innovator in higher education marketing and enrollment strategy. We offer groundbreaking services in the areas of research, strategy, digital marketing, lead generation, slate optimization, student search, website development, and creative. And we will talk about most of those here today. My role is to amplify our research, our success, our results. I drive marketing strategies and increase engagement for clients and higher ed professionals like you all. I spent almost 7 years as part of the marketing and communications team at Skidmore College here in upstate New York. So I want to make sure that everybody has actually heard my introduction and all the wonderful things I had to say about myself. So let's do a quick audio check. If everybody could use the raise your hand feature and let me know that the audio is coming through. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. We've got some nice friends out there. Oh, good. And thanks, Megan. I appreciate that. But we've got, let's see, friends from Wilkes, friends from Central Michigan. Wonderful. Nice to see you all here. Okay, a few housekeeping items before we get started. Let's see here. Today's webinar is going to take about 45 minutes. We have saved 15 minutes for Q&A. We are recording the webinar. It will be available for download most likely next week, along with the slide deck. You all get early access to this because you showed up today. So thank you for that. During the webinar, you can ask questions using the Zoom control panel's question feature if you want to send the question directly to me. But we've also opened up the chat, and I see a few folks chatting in there as well. If you would like to use the chat to engage with the participants and the host, just make sure you have your settings sent to everybody so that we can all see that. And we hope and encourage that you will join the conversation on the back channel today. Finally, we are going to send out a post-webinar survey. Your comments and ratings are greatly appreciated. They influence topic selection in the future. And my colleague, Travis Corey, is working the back channel. He'll be sure to send out a survey at the end of the webinar for you to fill out, as well as an email.
And Daniela, we have a question in there about which of the presenters was the favorite, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the poll question, right?
Okay.
It's actually a great segue because I am pleased to introduce our presenters today. Thank you, Eric. Voltaire Santos Moran, he's the co-founder and led M. Stoner as CEO and head of client experience for the past 2 decades before becoming the EVP of web strategy at Carnegie. For more than a decade, he has spent his time in development and alumni relations, working on print, publications, alumni magazines, capital campaigns, and website launches. He's a natural storyteller, enjoys teaching others how to effectively tell their brand story, empowering colleges and universities to forge transformative, memorable, and successful connections with their audience. His expertise in information architecture, content strategy, and governance moves institutions from a project mindset to a process mindset with powerful results. Welcome, Voltaire. It is nice to have you.
Ella?
Next up, we have Eric Page, and let me just pull up your bio here, Eric. Sorry, I'm a step behind. How could I do that to you? The EVP of Enrollment and Marketing Strategy at Carnegie. He brings a bold approach to clients' enrollment solutions, propelled by more than 15 years of experience leading and executing cutting-edge communications and marketing strategies. He has expertise literally across the board. This includes strategic planning, organizational dynamics, higher ed, enrollment and marketing, media and public relations, digital marketing, social media, website design, storytelling, and content marketing strategy. Voltaire, look out. I think he's coming for both your and my jobs here. He previously the admissions recruitment marketing team at University of Iowa, where he engineered a 17% growth of enrollment over a 2-year period. It is nice to have you here, Eric. Thank you for joining us.
I got to scale back that bio for sure.
No, I like it. It's impressive.
I aspire to you, Eric. I aspire to you.
Next up is Alexa Poland. She manages the daily operations of Carnegie's leading edge digital marketing team and the largest team at Carnegie. I think it's worth saying it's not in her bio, but is in there. She understands the complexities of recruitment and enrollment marketing challenges as a former collegiate director of marketing with more than 20 years of student-facing experience. She also serves as a board member of everyone's favorite American Marketing Association and works alongside colleagues to plan and execute the Higher Ed Symposium every year. Alexa, hello, how are you today? Wonderful. Last but not least, Megan Robinson, an expert in the endless possibilities of Slate. And to say she is eager to share her enthusiasm feels like an understatement here, but she is eager to share her enthusiasm about the latest and greatest new features. Her work in higher ed and in building our Slate implementation division has helped her understand the complexities of recruitment and operations in the higher ed industry. She joined Carnegie in 2021 as part of the company's merger with Underscore, a dedicated Slate development and optimization company. Welcome, Megan. All right. So let's get down to the nitty gritty here. Our goal today is to paint a vision for an integrated ecosystem of communications in service to your student recruitment. And that's a tall order. So the next question everybody always asks is, how are we going to do that? And here's how we're going to do that. We're going to walk you through the typical landscape, what it looks like on campus and online. We're going to talk about how those landscapes are changing to form a new and emerging ecosystem. And then we're going to give you some steps on how to get started. After we go through all that, we're going to save time for questions and answers at the end. But as I mentioned before, feel free to chat them. We'll flag them as we move through. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Voltaire to get the ball rolling.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Daniela. And wanted to give a quick shout out to Alexa and Casey and Judy and Angelique and Eric. It is great to see you all in attendance. Thanks for joining us today. So the typical landscape of higher ed, I don't know if any of you have read the sort of 20-year retrospective that Michael Stoner, my business partner, sent out via intelligence, but he looked back on the last 20 years, and one of the realizations is the more things change, the more things stay the same in some ways, right? So when we talk about the typical landscape of higher education, this beautiful bucolic scene is something that many of you are probably familiar with and have talked to us about, the idea of silos. So there are a number of different players at a college or university that work with prospective and current students. And so we've got undergraduate admissions, and usually undergraduate admissions manages the student CRM and has a slate of digital campaigns, slate, no pun intended, for recruiting students. And then graduate admissions sometimes has their own CRM and their own set of digital campaigns. And typically grad admissions and undergraduate admissions might talk to each other, but they don't really coordinate their efforts or their messaging. Then you've got marketing and communications, and marketing and communications usually owns the website. They usually take the lead in brand strategy, brand research, and brand activation. You've got student affairs working on student success portals, and then information technology working on the content management system and the enterprise level portals that typically aren't the same as the student success portals and any recently accepted student portals. Then you've got institutional advancement that has its own CRM that's usually separate from the CRM for prospective students. And then hovering in that sort of ethereal twilight is this idea of analytics, which everyone loves, but no one owns. So that's a fairly typical scenario that we see when we talk with clients. So let's take a poll and see where we are as a group here. So 1, 2, 3. Number 1, that landscape is more or less us, all the pretty silos. Number 2, we're moving in the right direction in terms of coordination and collaboration. Or number 3, we are a well-oiled machine across departments, and we have our ecosystem in absolute order. Daniela, launch the poll.
All right, they're coming in. What's your guess, Voltaire?
Megan, this is where you start with the Disney music, the Disney background music.
Oh no, don't do that to me, Volt.
I'm gonna give them about 10 more seconds. So get your answers in now, folks. I'm actually sort of surprised at the results that I'm seeing so far. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Ending poll. What do you guys think? What's the answer?
I'm gonna hope for some twos.
I'm gonna,
I'm gonna
I'm
say
being
heavy two.
optimistic too.
Okay. All right, you would not be correct. It is
Ah,
number one. 60% of folks are saying that
Wait,
typical
0 threes?
0 3s.
that's
Yeah.
a sad landscape.
Yeah.
It's so pretty. You know, I imagine it dotted with cows and greenery. Anyway.
How that's going to change our webinar moving forward, Voltaire. Tall order.
Nice. Well, let's talk about the emerging ecosystem. And this is something that you all live on a day-to-day basis. Everyone talks today about the fact that the traditional funnel is dead, that you've got people entering from multiple areas across different channels. They're engaging in different ways. You've got stealth applicants that you have no idea about until they actually apply. You've got people finding you from multiple vantage points. And so what used to be a funnel, what used to be a fairly linear way of communicating, has become an ecosystem. And unlike that last slide that we saw, where it was basically a landscape of people within their own silos, owning their piece of the puzzle, in the emerging ecosystem, what we have is prospective students and their influencers at the absolute center. And then all of the different entry points to your institution, whether that be your website or events or digital or paid search or organic search. And in this sort of ecosystem, what matters most is that your communications are targeted, they're differentiated, they're segmented, and they're personalized. So as we move into this new reality, there are three, I would say, principles and or areas of focus that I think are the upcoming trends. And we're going to be talking, I think, a lot about this in the coming year in our knowledge capital, our blogs, our white papers, our webinars. The first focus is this idea of integration and collaboration. And one of the realizations we need to come to is that human connection is essential both at the brand level and at the administrative level. So those of you who are familiar with Carnegie knows that that the way that we approach brand is with the understanding that at the core, what we are trying to do is forge human connections, because we understand that human beings are wired to connect. And so the way that we approach brand and brand articulation is with that goal of making a connection. But that's not just at the brand level. In this ecosystem, we need to connect at the human level when we're talking about admissions and advancement and student life and IT. And I don't think the structures of universities are going to change anytime soon. So what has to happen is more collaboration across the departments and more human connection, because no mandate is going to be as good as people who understand that their shared purpose, their shared goals can only be accomplished when they build those bridges on a day-to-day basis and they work together to make those things happen. So the second area of focus, I would say, is this idea of personalization and attribution. Now, we've been talking about personalization for freaking ever, right? Everyone has wanted to take the equivalent of an Amazon experience and bring it to higher ed. And I love and embrace the philosophy of personalization. I think it sort of breaks down when you realize that it's very different when you're looking at where to go for your undergrad and graduate degree and you're deciding between coffee filter brands. So when we talk about personalization to support the prospective student journey, it's not about amassing this warehouse of content, which most people will say is the biggest barrier to personalization. I don't think that's true. I think the biggest barrier to personalization is the fact that we don't understand our audiences enough. And to do personalization and attribution well, less is more. As we understand the student journey, as we understand the information that's really important and what we want people to do as they move forward and what they want to accomplish, then we can strip away a lot of the noise associated with personalization and really focus on the content and on the conversions that matter. And then the third area of focus, I would say, is this idea of measurement. So our colleague Ben Arendt talks about this a lot. In this ecosystem, every entry point requires a message and a metric. And we've talked a lot, I think, institutionally across our industry for years about the importance of measurement. But I think that the way we approach measurement right now is fairly blunt instrument, right? At the end of the day, we look at the number of people who have enrolled or matriculated, and that's our metric. But in this emerging ecosystem, we need to look at analytics much more granularly, tracking as people progress in their relationship with institutions, looking at those micro conversions, looking at the ways that they engage with content, having more of an understanding throughout the process and not at just the end point will make us better at being able to measure. And it's all in service, again, to making those connections and to cultivating those relationships. So that's the framework upon which we're going to talk now about how to get started.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Volt. Danielle, could we launch another quick poll to gauge whether the audience says ecosystem or ecosystem? Because I think we're going to run into some conflicting nomenclature here. Anyway, as we advance through this, really the first thing that we want to think about in shaping your ecosystem for your various audiences is your brand position. And we think a lot about this concept of your market really shaping what's possible for you as an institution or any business, that when you focus on who you are as an institution, that has to be through the lenses of what the realities are in your market surrounding you. So how does the market perceive you as an institution relative to your true competition? And how is that competition positioning themselves within a market that you can then shape a strategy that is strategic and authentic to who you are to disrupt that competitive space and appeal to those audiences? And one thing that is central to that, of course, is building familiarity. And that's the next slide, Daniela, is that familiarity is foundational to building that brand affinity. If people are not aware of you, if they don't know who you are and what you're about, they can't develop an opinion. If I don't know Megan, I can't shape an opinion of her as a person. She can't shape an opinion of me. It's the same for institutions. So the first step in branding is really building that familiarity. But again, it has to be rooted in that context of the market surrounding you and the context of your competition. And Volt mentioned this earlier in his slides, but the human connection piece of the puzzle is huge. As we audit communications around colleges and universities across the country, generally speaking, higher ed is pretty bad at this in mass communication. Everyone, of course, talks about if we can get students to campus, if we can interact with them in person, we can win. That's when we make that connection. But our communications lean heavily towards process, heavily towards facts and figures and statistics about the institution, things that don't really carry any emotive meaning, and they don't influence the feeling of the audience. And ultimately, that's really what we're after, because your brand is not going to be the tagline on the billboard. It's not going to be the copy or content on a digital ad or in an email that you send. Your brand is the way people feel when they think about your institution. And that's where value emerges in the audiences when they're comparing you to other competition within their decision set for prospective students. So we gotta measure that, and we can measure that. You can quantify feeling, and it can and should be the foundation of your brand strategy as you're shaping your messaging for the future. We do that at Carnegie with, and some of you have probably heard us talk about this, psychometrics, which is really the blending of big demographic data and human psychology and personality. That we want to take a look at who you are as an institution, who your audiences are, and then really work to build a connective tissue there that is highly emotive, that is attracting the students who are a right fit for your institution, because of course everyone is interested in retention and graduation rates and serving the students through a lived experience that matches with the experience we're marketing. And that's rooted in personality and psychology. So those are the dots that we're connecting in our work as a research firm when we look at branding. But again, you have to get past the facts and the figures and statistics that so many of us lean into and tell your story in repetition in a consistent and authentic way from all of your stakeholders across your entities. But the big question that we answer in our work, that I know you all are trying to answer every day in bridging those silos across campus, is what is right? What is the right tone and feel of the expression of your brand message? And there are a variety of ways to dig into that, but it's so critically important moving into the future that there is alignment across those silos on campus, that you're all speaking in the same voice, all telling the same story in repetition, so the audiences understand who you are, and more importantly, how to differentiate you from the other institutions in your competitive set. One thing that we see again and again, we have a lead generation database of students in our College Express platform, and we survey outgoing seniors in high school every year and ask them about their experience in their college search. And we hear again and again anecdotally that they just don't know how to differentiate one institution from the next, because you all sound and look and feel the same. And so breaking out of that noise that exists is really crucially important in building a brand message platform. And how that translates to creative, I think is really interesting. And what we drive at is data-informed creative, that every pixel has a purpose on the page. Every word is grounded in the research that we have generated to be differentiating, that it's not enough to just produce a beautiful website or a beautiful image, that it has to be rooted in data and have a purpose to differentiate you. And that is possible in this space, which is largely a sea of sameness in the collateral and websites and things that we see. The next question that we are trying to answer, and that I think is crucially important, is how knowing what to say to different segments of students. Historically, higher education segmentation, we have a lot of demographic data on our students. A lot of demographic data points exist within your CRM, within your historical enrollment data, and the schools who are doing the best jobs at segmenting to audiences are doing it based on binary and demographic data points. So a student is in state or out of state, they're high achieving or not high achieving, their app status in their process. Those are all good data points, but those don't speak to the soul of who the student is and what is going to move them to connect with the institution. So the right side of this slide that you're looking at right now is where we want to focus, and that's on the psychographics, the things that are going to drive the emotions, connect with who the student is, and really build that bridge of affinity for your institution. So we work in this space conducting research and connecting the big demographics to the psychographics of the prospective student populations, custom to every school that we do this for, because of course your student population is different and distinct from that of the institution down the road. But I think about this in the context of why this is so important. And I have two children, 13-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son, and actually 10, just turned 10 last month. My 10-year-old recently got a pair of Nikes online where he was able to go in and pick every color panel of those shoes. That's a pretty custom consumer experience. It's pretty personalized in the way that he went through it. They're horrendously ugly, the resulting shoes, but they are uniquely him. And I think about what his expectation is going to be for a consumer experience. I know we don't like to think about it that way necessarily in higher education, but he's going to have pretty high expectations for how he's messaged to in 4 or 5 years when he gets into that process. And so we have to appeal to that individual with personalized communications, because the student is in control of this experience. Circling back to what Volt talked about with that ecosystem Volt, in how they interact with your brand through all of those channels and all of those ports of entry. They're in control. We can no longer just usher them through a linear path of their college search journey. We have to have responsive communications plans built that are going to deliver personalized messages at all of those points of entry. And this is not easy. That's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, is being there and being able to support this build of an ecosystem that is unique for you and your institution. But yeah, that's a big takeaway for me from this, is that the students now manage the process and are in control. I'm going to pass the mic there to Alexa and let her kind of run forward with some tactical things.
Great. If you could advance one more, Daniela, that would be great. And I'm team ecosystem, for what it's worth, for anybody interested. But so that message and that metric piece of having a message and a metric for every port of entry, I think is so important, and something that is the beginning place of where you can build out your plan. We don't have a ton of time today to really dive deeply into what, channel execution at a very granular level could look like. But I tried to lump this together and to keep it as high level as I could, just to get us started. And maybe in a future session, we can absolutely dive deeper. But this is sort of the foundational and the beginning piece of what a digital marketing strategy playbook could look like. And what I've done here is, you heard about the branding, you heard about, persona building and authentic personality and students who we need to reach. And I probably oversimplified a little bit here, but I put our prospective students, whether they're undergraduate students, graduate students, into three really broad buckets. And I want to, and sort of a mindset, right? The prospective mindset. I want to point out very clearly that I'm not at all implying that this is a linear process or this is a linear flow. But the three broad buckets in its oversimplified form is that you have prospective students that I'm calling your contemplators. Those are the folks that have, maybe they're not really thinking of a higher education opportunity. It's a fleeting thought. It's in the back of their mind. Maybe on that long run, they're thinking about, I'd like to go back to school, or maybe I want to go to school and get that associate's degree or bachelor's degree. So it's in the back of their mind, but they're really not actively searching. And then you have this second group that I'm calling your tire kickers. These are the folks that are looking and they know that they want to pursue a higher education opportunity, but they're not really ready to pull the trigger right now, right here. So those might be your freshman, your sophomore, if you're thinking in the undergraduate side, so they know that in the distant future that they will be going to college, but they're very early in their journey. This might be your career changer who thinks that they want to change their career. They're thinking about it, but they're not quite ready to do that yet. And then the third bucket here, those that are completely in market. These are your folks that are ready to act. These are your seniors. These are your career changers that want to out of their job now or career advancement. They are going to be part of your incoming class of 2022. So that is the foundational perspective mindset. And to reiterate, it's not linear. Anyone can come in and or out of these groups at any given time, depending on the circumstances that they're in, where they are in their journey, and it can change in an instant. So now thinking about that perspective mindset, how do you align the approach to each of these different categories, if you will? So when I think about that first category of contemplators, it's really all about that branding and recall, right? So we heard Eric talking about branding and what's an authentic brand to you and for your institution, but it's also about that recall. We want, when they are not just contemplating, but actually in market, you want to make sure that your institution is top of mind for these prospective students. I would very much argue that institutions need to consider this branding strategy, or having a branding, digital marketing and digital, or just a branding marketing strategy in general, always on, because it's not just for this group to have branding and recall as being a critical cornerstone of importance. Branding and recall is important all the way through every stage that a prospective student might journey. So having that always on branding effort is something that we all need to consider. And when you think about that branding and recall, so what does that look like in terms of measurement? Like, what am I looking for if I know that my branding and recall strategies are actually working? And so this is about getting your brand out there into the marketplace. Impressions, right? The views that you might have on a video that you have out there, the shares, the likes for content that maybe you're putting out there on social media, whether it's organic or paid. So those are the kinds of things that you're looking for in terms of measurement. And then when you move on and think about your tire kickers, right? So now we're really talking about driving engagement, driving inquiry, and having digital marketing in market that's going to help to align to that engagement and inquiry generating type of activity, so that you can gather those leads and you can start to put them into your comm flow, so that you can start to be actively in communication with them. So that you can start to hopefully really push them towards the bigger milestone types of conversions. So the digital marketing play that you have here is about driving those clicks. It's about driving leads and having good search, impression, share, and driving those RFIs. And then finally, for those that are really, they're ready to act, they're ready to take the next step, it's about conversion and those bigger conversion metrics, like getting them to sign up for an open house registration, getting those click-through rates and those leads and RFIs, of course, but then ultimately, at the end of the day, we're here, we want to have those applications started, completed, accepted, and deposited. So then aligning your messaging and thinking about the message, if you think about these broad groups, that first sort of contemplative group, if you're thinking about it, like they're barely even in the consideration mode, right? It's a fleeting moment, it's that long run. So it's important that your messaging that is getting in front of the student with messages that are going to resonate based on what you know about that prospective student. So it's taking in that psychographic type of detail and being able to help them through their consideration and the discovery and the exploration of your institution. And then as they journey maybe into being a tire kicker, or they venture into being in market, the why becomes so important. Why your institution over another institution? What's the value that you're going to add? And how does that connect to them as a human? And all the things that both Volt and Eric talked about. And this is where comparison does start, right? So this is where they're comparison shopping. They're looking at your institution and your competitor's institution and trying to figure out why one over the other, what program, why this institution. And that's where the authenticity of who you are as an institution and how you resonate your message with the personality of that prospective student becomes so important. And then finally, in that very last stage, it's all about evaluation and comparison and getting action, getting them to complete their, using messaging around visiting and starting and enrolling and really trying to complete that end conversion. All right, so we talked about the prospect mindset. We talked a little bit about the approach. So now the channel mix. And again, we don't have a lot of time to dive deeply into each platform and each channel, but I will say, and I'll go through this rather quickly, but I will start with your website, because there is absolutely not a channel that is more critical as a port of entry than your website. There has never been a prospective student that has turned into an actual student who has not gone to your website. And that is just fact. And they're going to be coming to your website, whether they're in that contemplative stage and they're just starting to learn and explore about colleges and universities. And they're going to come back to your website when they need to apply and ultimately enroll, and everything in between, and many, many, many times in between. So I can't emphasize enough that probably the most critical entry point is your website. So to go alongside with your website, of course, you want to have a really solid search engine optimization plan that's going to bring people to your website. Your website will be discoverable. It's going to create for amazing content on your website. So those are some just really important pieces when we're talking sort of that very first stage of exploration. And then when we're talking about branding and recall, it's things like video and streaming, right? Your OTT, so streaming TV, your Hulu or your streaming radio, your Pandoras, your Spotifys. This is for that person who's on that long run and contemplating their life and their next step. They're going to hear your ad, and nope, they're not going to stop their run right then and there and click on it and then, ultimately fill out an RFI form. But they're going, if it's in the back of their mind and they're hearing those kinds of ads, it's what's going to push them potentially to the next micro moment. And then you have things in your channel mix too at those early phases, like student search and your CRM. And Megan, maybe you want to chime in here a little bit to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. So first I want to say, as we talk about the role of CRMs, of course, I'm going to use Slate as my example. So forgive me, but also can you blame me? So the contemplators. So this is about rethinking student search, as Alexa mentioned. Bring your search in-house through Slate and communicate to these students about your brand in a way that resonates with them based on what little you know about them. Even if that is through traditional segmentation where you're using high-level data to transfer those emotions that Eric was talking about, I'd encourage doing that. I'd also encourage the use of your anonymous microsite or your search landing page to give this group of students in particular an interactive, recognizable playground to learn more about your brand and how there may be a connection between you and them. And again, this is to push those messages of discovery, learn more, and exploration that Alexa, you're talking about.
And then as we think about the engagement and inquiry approach, your channel mix might change a little bit or be more advanced here, because now we're talking about things like more specific tactics like display, where we might do display outreach, which is phenomenal for top, sort of branding and recall. But now we're talking about maybe things like display retargeting, which is staying in front of an audience that has already been to your website and has engaged and shown some level of intent. So staying in front of them there. Of course, we're going to layer in PPC, pay-per-click. We want to capture your audiences with high intent that are doing searches around your institution or programs that you have to offer. Again, this is all to drive that engagement and inquiry so that you can stay in front of them for that lead nurture and comm flow throughout the rest of their journey. We have things like IP targeting, which will bolt on so nicely with student search. So you might be buying. So this is where we start talking about your admissions and your marketing teams coming together and maybe breaking some of those silos, right? So your admissions team, maybe you bought all those leads from the College Board or wherever. And so now we can not just execute through mail and email, but we can layer in IP targeting and be able to reach them digitally through display advertising using those very same lists. But this is also, going back to the website, when you're talking about engagement and inquiry, where of course your website isn't critically important, but you might want to start thinking about the personalization of your website. And it's actually, that sounds scary, but it's actually really easy to do. We have a proprietary tool at Carnegie called Carnegie Clarity, which runs on something called a customer data platform, which involves zero webmaster time. It can all be done internally by Carnegie. And by personalization, what this means is that you now have people coming to your website and with intent, right? So they're coming, they're exploring for your programs, they're looking for more information, they're hitting critical pages of your site. And as they do that, they're creating a behavioral segmentation of themselves based on the interests that they have. And once we can bucket those interests, we can actually personalize messaging back to them. So the next time they come back to the website, we can serve up pop-ups and customized messaging that can help push them down through the journey. So for instance, and we can talk about this in a minute with the CRM, it can talk to your Slate CRM and say, all right, so-and-so started an app but hasn't completed. Guess what? Next time Sally comes back, we can tell her gently, hey, application deadline is closing in 2 weeks, and hopefully push them back to complete that app. Or maybe you have segments of somebody who's interested in your nursing program and they've been exploring on your nursing pages. The next time that person comes back, we can serve up a personalized message, not personalized to the person, but a toaster or something on the homepage that says, we have a nursing webinar happening, sign up for the nursing webinar. So personalization, critically important, and another way to leverage your website.
Yeah, so jumping in with the CRM perspective here too, this is about bettering our current and future engagement strategies. So as Alexa mentioned, search comes into play here too, but now you can create those inquiry plus campaigns based on the new information that we now have about our students. We can see if we can get them to fill out a secondary inquiry form or whatever it is to get us more information about who they are, since we know they're more than just what their major is. You'll also want to personalize your inquiry landing page, which can be a person scope portal, to show them that you can meet their needs based on what you do know. And maybe this happens by embedding your digital viewbook with content blocks that show those lived experiences of academic or athletic or extracurricular interests. And again, now we're emphasizing those messages of why, comparison, and further exploration.
Great. And then finally, for conversion, driving those conversions and application and the channel mix here, it's basically a rinse and repeat very much of the kinds of strategies that you might be doing for engagement and inquiry. You might change your tactics and targeting a little bit based on, obviously, these folks are much further along. So your messaging is going to change as they are, highly intent and ready to buy. So your messaging is going to be more reflective of this audience that's ready to act. So I don't know if you have more to talk about in terms of the CRM, Megan, but.
Yeah, for sure. So at this point, your targeted yield, anti-melt, these campaigns should be so personalized that your students feel as if they're already part of your institution. So we know what motivates them at this point. So are we following up based on their interest in ROI or their job opportunities or social offerings? Are we introducing them to students succeeding in their academic areas of interest? We also need to step up our portal game at this point because your application status portal should really be changing as the status of your applicant changes. So whether it's a welcome to an applicant or congratulations when they're admitted or welcome home when they're deposited, and maybe even changing gifts throughout to show increasing levels of excitement. Pull in similar content to enhance the content of your email campaigns. Embed YouTube videos of a student on site at an internship that you know they'd be interested in. Link them to the website highlighting the story of a student that's been awarded the same in-state scholarship you know they're qualified for. And we also need to consider the measurable impact of stakeholder portals, whether it's parents or counselors. We know how big of a role that they play in the student making their decision, all of which you can track hits to demonstrate the interest. And at this stage, you can and should be taking advantage of ping pong. So the toasters and pop-ups that Alexa was talking about earlier, within Slate, you can also, for admitted students, show them that call to action of deposited and make sure that it's only showing to those admitted students and their peers who are also admitted. And again, these are communicating those messages of actually taking action and starting to take advantage of the tracking tools within each of these pieces.
Great. I saw a question float in regarding Clarity. Is it real time? Clarity is not real time. So while you're in that session, Clarity will be triggered the next time you come back to the website. So hopefully I answered that there. I see a bunch of other questions coming in here. I don't know if we want to field them now.
Let's wrap up first. I think we've only got one more, and I'm loving that the questions are coming in, and then we'll cull through some of these. We've got some good ones in the backlog, Alexa, especially for you.
All right, hot seat. All good. I'm going to close this up here really simply with thinking about building your digital plan from a really high level. Your plan should absolutely start with the goal, setting a goal. It should be quantifiable. What is it that you want to do? Is this branding? Is this lead generation? What is it that you want to achieve? Are you trying to, registrations for an open house? Whatever it might be, start with the goal and make that clear and quantifiable. From there, you want to layer in the things that Eric and Volt were talking about in terms of audience and psychographics. Who is your audience? What motivates them? Making sure that you're able to delineate and really speak to the audience that you're trying to recruit from. And that's going to build into your messaging. Once you know who your audience is, you can build your message tailored to what their aspirations are, what their beliefs are, what is going to be motivating to them, and to message on brand for what the authentic personality of your institution is. That messaging might change slightly depending on your channel execution. So of course, now you need to choose your channels. What channels do you want to be out there on? And the way you talk to a prospective student on LinkedIn, of course, is going to be very different than the way you might speak to somebody on Snapchat or TikTok. The creative execution might look differently, but the principles of what the persona is remains the same. So then you pick your channel execution to figure out how you're best going to get in front of the right audience at the right time. And then comes this piece of measurement of success. Knowing ahead of time, and I kind of blew through that earlier on, but understanding what is that measure of success at every stage, every phase, every category that your prospective students might be. And then you have, and all throughout, you want to be optimizing and making tweaks and adjusting your plan and making those optimizations so that the next time you go around, you'll be smarter. You can use historical data. You can see what was resonating, A/B test, all those kinds of good things to make your next campaign even that much more successful. I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. That's a great way to wrap up and a great way to segue into questions. I also was taking some notes along with the ecosystem poll. We need a poll about dog versus cat people, and also a poll on how many of you are on Slate and which CRM you're using. So look out for that email follow-up here. But Alexa, if you don't mind, I'm gonna keep you sort of on the mic here. We've got a really great question from Matt. Excuse me, who's asking if you have ever tested a list between tire kickers and highly qualified leads. He hates the idea of 2 calls to actions, but clearly the first group you want to click learn more or request info, while the second group is definitely an apply now. Very curious about your approach there.
So simply put, we A/B test all the time. And I would highly encourage you to A/B test on your call to actions. I'd also challenge some of you to maybe even break out of the barrier of the familiarity of the learn nows and apply nows and request info, and start thinking about. And so some of the work that we do when we do the persona work and the psychographic work is, okay, if we know that a student is motivated by things like exploration or inquiring, we might say explore instead of learn more, and using certain words that will resonate better in your messaging to the type of student that you are messaging to. So I would highly encourage you to A/B test. And I don't know if that fully answered your question, but yes, and we do this all the time.
Yeah, that's a great.
If I may, Daniela, I was
Yes,
going to say
please.
from a Slate perspective too, after you do your A/B testing, if you find that the 2 call to actions actually needs to resonate with both groups, you can always use liquid markup to add both call to actions in your emails, but make only one of those call to actions show to the group you're targeting. So just a tidbit there.
All about that optimizing, continuing to optimize for those goals. Absolutely. All right. Another question for you, Alexa, regarding pay-per-click. Now that Facebook and Instagram's new policy does not allow us to target 18 and under using customer lists, lookalike, or demographic targeting, do you have any advice on where to shift your PPC dollars for traditional undergraduate campaigns?
Okay, I think we're talking about 2 different things. So PPC being pay-per-click, we're still good at, on pay-per-click. Google has made some announcements in terms of targeting for under 18, but as we really peeled back those layers there, we're good still on PPC. But as it relates to Facebook and Instagram, yes, there was a major shift change in August. We're no longer allowed to load lists of students under 18. You're no longer able to do lookalike audiences and whatnot on Facebook and Instagram. So we have shifted, and we've been working with schools very closely. IP targeting, so that is list-based display where we can take those lists, and we've been doing this for years, so this isn't something new, where we can take those exact same lists and then be able to match those home addresses to their home IP address and be able to deliver those ads in home across all devices of a traditional undergraduate student. The huge bonus there too is, of course, those messages get in front of stakeholders, moms and dads within the house as well. Obviously, Snapchat and TikTok, I know you are all waiting with bated breath to talk about TikTok and Snapchat, so let's do it, have come on the rise significantly. In particular, TikTok, especially since the pandemic. I think the last statistic I saw that TikTok has now, if not matched, has surpassed users over Snapchat in the age group that we're talking about. Obviously, Snapchat is a very different creative approach, as is TikTok, and they're different from one another. So that approach being so different than what you might have been out there in market with Facebook and Instagram, you can load lists to both TikTok and to Snapchat, and you can do your traditional undergraduate targeting there, list-based, et cetera. So you can move some of those dollars there. Just be prepared to do a very different creative execution.
Yeah. I think strategy is really the key there across the board. That's a really good point, Alexa, and switching up your measures of success there too. I want to take it back to the beginning to sort of, maybe this is a question for Voltaire and Eric, but Hillary had a really good comment earlier on where about brand story and brand promise, and she says she comes from an online community building background, and it's the same thing now. The digital format has changed. Can we talk a little bit about institution type? So we talked about differentiating yourself. And I know that there are folks here who are from your traditional undergraduate experience, who are from community colleges. Maybe a little bit about where to start in focusing on brand differentiation. We hear a lot from clients, we're very unique in this particular way. What is the best way to get started on that brand expression?
Great question, Eric. I'd love for you to take the start on that, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think another thing that we hear all the time, Daniela, is, we're a really well-kept secret or a hidden gem. And I think it takes an institutional vulnerability to kind of dig in and identify where you can really be bold in an authentic way, and where you definitely shouldn't play. And I think that runs counter to a couple of different things in higher education that are tough patterns to break out of. Number one, we're really bad at being brash, so to speak, or patting ourselves in the back or being too loud and proud about anything to differentiate, particularly in certain regions of the country. But I think higher education as a whole is really sort of hesitant to take that route. And number two, we typically have tried to be everything to everyone in our messaging because we're afraid of alienating any audience that we might not then enroll or engage. But the real thing is that institutions are distinct from one another, and you do have things you should plant your flag in the ground and be loud about and let people know about. And there are students and audiences who should not be engaged and who should not enroll. And so I think digging into those two things, your true points of differentiation that you can really claim authentically, and then the audiences that should not be there. And ultimately you're serving the institution and you're serving those students by digging into those things.
Yeah.
And I think from our perspective, when we work with websites, everyone wants to talk about the same things, right? You're going to have this wonderful on-campus experience with faculty members who know your name, who are at the top of their field, but who are personally committed to your individual success, experiential learning, a location that's this perfect blend of being close to the city and urban environment, but still bucolic, friends that you are going to make for life, opportunities for leadership. So we talk about all these same things, and we talk about them because they're important. They're part of the college experience, but they are table stakes. And putting the word really in front of one of these doesn't make it differentiating. We really care about our students. I can't tell you how many brand platforms I've seen for business schools that say, our students really care about changing the world. So I think Eric's absolutely right. We talk about what's important in terms of stats and numbers and outcomes because we have to appeal to both heart and head. Part of the decision for going to school is pragmatic, but Eric was very right that so much of the decision is emotional. And in order to connect with students, we have to push past the sort of attributes that we as institutions talk about all the time and get to the differentiator and the actual personality of the institution. And people might not believe that that's possible, but think about all the times when a student has said, I knew the first time I stepped on campus that this was the place for me. That's because they got a sense of the personality of the institution firsthand. So it is a thing, it is real, and it is worth trying to figure out. And it's worth pushing past what we lively talk about all the time because it's the easiest go-to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And this is a good segue into my next question, which is, we covered a lot today. And for institutions out there who are only in admissions or who are only in their central marketing team, any advice, and maybe this is for each of you, on where to start or where to focus? What can somebody do today that can start integrating all of these pieces?
I can chime in.
Who wants to go first?
Go, Megan.
Just because I know I'm going to be the one to say it, but I would say start by showing those additional stakeholders a demo of Slate. I think that people don't necessarily wrap their head. I know that's a cop-out answer for me, but it worked for me. I mean, before I had, like we showed on our earlier today's landscape slide, different areas on campus owning different things because they don't know the resources that other offices can offer with their own system. So you start talking about student success and marketing and all these other things that can all be done with the same instance, save money and get everyone on the same page. So I think a demo could go a long way, just saying.
I'm going to say two things. Danielle, you asked what can we do today? I would say on December 16th, start by celebrating what you've accomplished already. I think it's been really easy the past 12 months to take that for granted in the world we're all working in. And you all have probably accomplished a lot and cleared a lot of hurdles in your everyday life on campus. So celebrate that, celebrate your teams. And then as you're looking forward to the new year, it's just got to be bird by bird. I'm sure you got a long to-do list and take it incrementally. If there's 10 things you want to accomplish, if it's brand positioning, if it's segmentation, if it's as simple as getting a campaign running in your CRM or launching a new digital initiative, just pick them off bird by bird and celebrate those wins along the way.
My answer is start talking. Admissions folks, marketing folks, come out of your offices and start talking together and collaborating and pulling in the same direction. You should be working together, and that starts with just basic human connection. So start there. And let's not slow the pace of change. We saw amazing things happen during COVID, where these groups, guess why that happened? Everybody came together, pulled in the same direction, and had to solve in a crisis. And through that, great innovation came out of it. And so just because the pandemic, while not gone, is not as the same threat that it may have been in 2020, but let's not slow that pace of change.
Love that. And I would say, from my standpoint, there are two things. Number one, figure out what your major priorities are, because there are going to be a ton of competing priorities, and you need to decide what number one and number two are. Then the second is figure out what's really broken, and then decide between those two things what your action plan should be. So spoiler alert, now's not the time to try and get a website up in time for yield. It's not going to happen, right? So we've got a lot of clients who are trying to rush to get a new website up in time for the spring. If you're going to do it right, and if your website is as broken as most websites are, that's not the place to start. So figure out what you can do in terms of mitigating strategies for yield, plan well for a longer website sort of timeline, and then, like Eric said, start working those priorities. Figure out what your priorities are, tackle them one by one, and start working together, as Alexa said. And then, as Megan said, the right platform makes a huge difference in our ability to work together.
Excellent.
Fine. Your all's suggestions can go first, and then they can do a demo of Slate. I'll accept that.
I love it. Well, I hate to interrupt the Badger Love Fest that's happening on the chat here, but I will make a plug for my beloved Ohio State Buckeyes. So go Bucks. But as we wrap up Q&A, you like how I slid that in there, Alexa? I do have some additional resources to share for everybody. First up is this team, I believe, I know Voltaire is presenting at the upcoming 2022 Carnegie Conference, where we will dive deeper into this critical connection between marketing strategy and recruitment. And I hope that you all have a chance to join us there. Next up, our friend Eric Page is the host of everyone's favorite podcast, The Quad, and season 3 is coming in January. Eric you interview a thought leader every week that reveal a little bit, I love this tagline, a little bit about higher ed and a little bit about themselves. So stay tuned for what Eric will reveal with your favorite thought leaders this season. And then the last thing is we would love to explore partnership opportunities with you all here. So whether that's, a Slate demo or building some experience maps or talking about some ideas for digital marketing campaigns or your brand differentiators, please contact us and get in touch with us. And then lastly, just another reminder to take that post webinar survey link and keep an eye in your inboxes for the webinar deck and the recording. But that's all we have for today. And until the next, almost the next conference, but the next webinar, we will see you then. Thank you all for joining, and thanks to our presenters for
Happy holidays, everyone. Take care.
Bye.